Good afternoon, everyone. It is January 5th, 2026. I said 25 yesterday. It's 12:15 in the afternoon. And yeah, there's so much news going on, and a lot of people are just speculating on things. Some speculation even from Max Blumenthal, because nobody can tell the entire story. A lot of stuff is kept hidden, by the regime. It's very much like I think I put out yesterday, as I was getting it from sources. Everybody was getting it from the same sources, and I think it was from the U.S., which was inaccurate, that 40 Venezuelans died in this little escapade by Donald Trump, and it later figures say it's at least 80, and so there's probably more, because Trump struck in different places, someplace kind of up in the mountains beyond Caracas. That's where Maduro was hiding, or that's where he was staying, or whatever. The U.S. knew exactly where he was at. They said they knew exactly what he ate and what clothes he wears and what he does. It's like a routine. It's not a good thing to be having a routine. I mean, that's one thing that I thought everybody knew. When you're suspecting a terrorist attack or something, or somebody to be hitting you, you break up your routine. I thought everybody knew that. I wasn't even thinking about it myself, but it came back to me, that I don't even know where, but I was somehow trained to do that too. Never go, leave places at the same time, and never take the same route and all that. And I don't even remember where I learned that, but it was sometime in the past. So I have some really interesting things to be talking about. This oil conquest of Donald Trump is a lot deeper than you think it is. I'm going to go through a little bit of the history, a little bit of what was going on in Syria and all of that, what happened. And I'm going to talk a little bit about regime change. A lot of people are saying that it's never worked. No, it has always worked. It has always worked. Everything that they wanted to accomplish on these regime change things has always been accomplished. So I'll get into that. And then I'll go into a little bit talking about the wealth of some people. Now, I'll start off with that. Donald Trump, as we all know, he used a lot of his money when he ran for president the first time, for his own campaign. I think he was probably taking quite a bit out of his pocket. And I think when he left the White House, I think he was worth less than $2 billion. And then after he left, he started up Truth Social. And he also got invested, I guess, in crypto, as well as apparently Polymarket. That's going to be interesting. And so he made a lot of billions. Some people estimate that Donald Trump is now worth $7 billion. And he might have more money than Zelensky. And Zelensky, that is another thing. That is another thing right there. It was pretty well established years ago. I think, when was that? I'm not exactly sure, but I remember when it was well established, I think by Forbes, that Zelensky was worth over $2 billion. It was 2-something billion. And they were going over what he owned, and, mostly the television industry and everything in Ukraine at that time. And he had a lot of properties, and everybody knows that he does. It's a fact that he does, and he has very expensive properties, and all of them are worth well over $1 million, except for that house that I mentioned in the Caribbean. He might have paid less than for that. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, it's got an extensive bomb shelter. There's no pictures of that, but instead they came up with a lot of this fake stuff. Even Elon Musk contributed to that, saying how fabulously rich Vladimir Putin is, and I think Elon Musk said he's probably the richest man in the world. And that's all speculation with zero evidence. You could think if Putin were the type of person that everybody was trying to make him out to be in the West, that he probably would be that rich. But apparently he's not anything like that. And it's like, why would a person be seeking all that wealth and spend all those years in government service, doing all the things that he does, wasting all of his time meeting with people and going to these places and doing that, when he can't even spend any of that money that he's supposed to have gotten? And if you look at Zelensky, it's a lot different. Zelensky really doesn't do much. He travels around and gets more money. Everybody knows that. That is his main job, and that is even what everybody says. His job is to go around and get money, go all over the world and get money. And it's a known fact that in Ukraine and how the system works there, the system that he grew up in, you take a cut. Everybody gets a cut. As the money starts rolling downhill, everybody gets a cut. And he's on the very top. He gets the biggest cut, the biggest percentage. And it's been well established. A lot of people have been looking into that I think the cut is supposed to be between 10 and 15%. You know, it's kind of a standard thing. And what he's been getting, you know, it's very big hush-hush. And it was talked about towards the beginning when he became president of Ukraine. You know, his value was over $2 billion at that time. And it's very strange. And you hear about like casinos that he bought, or one casino, and he bought this property in England. He bought one on Baker Street, and he bought a residence from the royal family of Great Britain. And he, very early on, he bought a very expensive residence for his parents in Israel. And he bought himself a place in Florida. And so he's got lots of properties and in a lot of places, a winery, of course, in Italy. And it's like, if these are all fake and they're trying to make it out to be fake, and I'll tell you what, just like Bill Gates, everybody knows what he did in India. And he's a big, he's tied in with this platform that I'm speaking with you on. So I don't know if I should get in too deep. I already get hurt enough, you know, by my channel already hurts a lot from that. So I don't want to get too deep into that guy. But he did some things in India, and it caused some harm, particularly to young women. And he did some things in Africa. And guess what? It's wiped off the internet. There were people trying to research that, and everybody knew that. Everybody knew that. It was on the internet before. And I think some people even got some short little clips of him in India and whatever, but now it's gone. It's gone off the internet. It's completely wiped out. And they've completely changed everything about Zelensky's wealth as well. It's gone. They wiped it off the internet. There are ways, I guess, to do this. And I've heard about that. You've all heard about that many times. There are people that have this ability, and one of them, obviously, is Bill Gates. He can get rid of anything off of the internet. And you guys remember, a lot of you remember out there, you saw him sitting in front of like these TED Talks or whatever, him talking about reducing the world's population through vaccination. And he said this number was 15%. And there's this, I keep saying, and I don't know if I'm allowed to be talking about this stuff very much on YouTube, but that's kind of a magic number. When you consider, for example, there was a whistleblower from Pfizer, and they told you out of a vat of 100 of these medications that this was during when this, of course, this was experimental, as you know, during the COVID times. It had to have been experimental. Now, who would push something onto the entire world immediately, so quickly, when it's normally at the very minimum 7 years that a vaccine needs to be studied before they would start using it on the general public? Not 1 year. So incredible. So anyway, the person from Pfizer said, I don't know if this is true, but that was one thing, and it stuck with me because it sounds like, wow. And I remembered the 15% from Bill Gates. And then you see that that everybody that gets vaccinated doesn't die, and a lot of them, the majority, are still walking around, but not all of them. But I heard how many of those vaccines in 100 are actually the vaccine, and how many are not, how many are placebos. And you can guess that if this thing is an experiment and you throw it out where all of them are the vaccine, and in a short time, maybe even within a year, maybe even in 2 years, if a lot of people croaked, what do you think the repercussions would be for these companies that put out these vaccines? That wouldn't be very good. And like I said, I don't know if I'm allowed to be talking very openly about all this stuff, but that number that I told you about, that magic number of 15, and then you can probably wonder what this whistleblower from this company said on how many of them in a vat of 100 were actually the real vaccine. So that's the best way I can tell you, and I think you all can read between the lines. So I don't want to get taken down again. I've been taken down for similar topics already and other times, and maybe even just talking about this. And as you know, what did it take 9 or 10 hours for my video to upload onto YouTube yesterday? But there are people that they treat worse. And Angie, I should say this, I'll say this on the video. You've told me about some people, and very brilliant lady, and I think she's a colonel at some point in time. And these people are very, very, very good about things that happen in the U.S. government for a long time. The woman is sharper than practically anybody out there. And if you can put her name, maybe even a link in the comments, that would be fantastic, because they went after them much more than me. They had much less views, and they were much better with their information and everything. So it's incredible. I started thinking, wow, I guess they're pretty nice to me, compared to those other people, which were actually better. This woman is, and she was on a corporate media, Rafsanjani or whatever this guy is, and I was listening, and it's like, she was sharp. I mean, she is so sharp and has so much information that you'll be so overwhelmed you can't even gather in all that information that this woman says from all of these things like Mockingbird, all of the operations and things, and she's really up on them. She's not reading a teleprompter like a lot of people do. And I even have notes, and a lot of time I skip. I'm not reading the notes right now, but I better get onto them, otherwise I won't get through my topics here, which is some very interesting things. I was talking about how much money these people have, and I was going into Zelensky. You know how much money they say he has? I think they said, some say he's got 20 million or 30 million. It's like, come on, I tell you what, the guy's got vastly more than that, vastly more. His wife spends half that much when she goes and buys jewelry in New York, and people have published the receipts online. So if she has all that kind of money to spend in one shop on jewelry, how can this guy only have that amount? And it was already being put out when it was told that he had 5 billion. He had 2 point something billion, and then people said, or I don't know who was the one, I can't even remember. But then it was put out that he had 5, and then it was starting, that's when they started putting the brakes on, and that's when they probably started going out and having a campaign to get rid of all of this stuff on how much money that guy has. So do you think he's got less money than all of these underlings that work for him that have been proven to have huge, huge sums of money? Who is this Yatsenyuk? He was the first prime minister of Ukraine right after the United States overthrew the government there in 2014. And that's the guy Victoria Nuland talks about on her tapes. I think we should put, what did they call him? Yatsenyuk, Yuk or Yats or something, make him the prime minister. Anyway, it was the United States that decided on who would be the leaders of Ukraine and all that. That's what Victoria Nuland's tape talking to the ambassador when it was exposed. And that's what that was all about. But anyway, this guy retired a billionaire. And he was a poor guy. He had probably less money than even me, when he became the prime minister. He was quite poor and just a regular government worker type of guy. And then he's retired in the U.S. as a billionaire. It's incredible. So do you think Zelensky has only 20 million? I mean, come on. He's got vastly more than that. Not even, if you want to talk about any kind of corruption, he's got far more than that he probably didn't get through corruption. He got it probably somewhat honestly through his corporations inside of Ukraine. And it's been exposed. He's got offshore corporations all over the place. Yeah, 20 million. Oh, yeah, we believe that one, don't we? But Donald Trump, I don't know. I guess even his fortune isn't disclosed. Some people, like I said, put it at 7 billion. But he's certainly probably worth 5 billion now. It's very good. I mean, the guy knows how to make money. There's no doubt about that. He might be very kind of stressed in certain things, but he knows how to make money. He knows how to bully people. He knows how to use power. I'm going to be getting into that too a little bit. So anyway, let's talk a little bit. These people that are talking, commentators, politicians, social media personalities, they've always been saying that regime change doesn't work. That's been constant topic now I've been hearing, especially in the last month. So I don't know. Everybody's parroting somebody who said, oh, regime change. We found out your regime change never works. But I'll tell you what, regime change works. It's always worked. Because what are the goals? What do they want? What's the mission? First, the mission is to remove somebody from power. Oh, okay, well, mission accomplished right there. They got somebody out. And it's not has nothing to do with stabilizing the country. They don't give a crap about the stabilization of the country. They're there to make money. And it's the donors and it's the people that whoever put the person in that overthrew the government or decapitated, hopefully not in a literal sense, but that got rid of somebody. I mean, they practically did that to Gaddafi. It's to make money for corporations. And that is in itself, that is what the big mission is. They don't care about the stabilization of the country. I mean, come on. Wow. So, so as a matter of fact, a lot of time, the destabilization of the country is the goal. The United States, and I believe that's, I want to look that up. I keep forgetting to look that up somewhere as this continuity of government. And the U.S. has a doctrine to keep other countries down economically. Wow, I never would have noticed that. I never would have noticed that in the world. Blowing up a pipeline or starting a war with another country to watch people kill each other off. Oh, I would never have guessed that they're trying to bomb a country into the Stone Age or whatever the deal is. Do you think they care about the Venezuelans? I mean, and it's not just the United States. Look at France. Look at what they were paying for uranium from, I don't know if it was Niger. Anyway, one of these Sahel countries. They were paying 5% of what the global cost is for uranium. I mean, they were really ripping them off royally. It's just like Exxon. Exxon in Venezuela, they were ripping Venezuela off royally. Virtually nothing went to Venezuela. It was being stolen. And Chevron made a deal, and it was... it worked with Venezuela and it worked for Chevron. So they stayed there and kept on pumping. But you're not even supposed to know about that. You know, Donald Trump never mentioned Chevron or nothing like that. I'm not just saying that everything that Chevron, sure, they're going to go for the best deal they possibly can. And I guess they reached an agreement with Hugo Chavez back in the old days. What's going on now with Chevron in Israel? I don't know. But as you know, Israel is going to be a fabulously rich country in natural gas and probably oil very, very soon. And I'm going to talk about that. I was talking about that years ago. I knew this for many, many years. Matter of fact, I've known this for at least 10 years, talking about that. That's the whole reason for the war in Syria. But, oh, that's going to be nice if you guys don't know this stuff already. So I'll get into it. And you can look it all up yourself. You just have to know how to use the internet, look up the names of companies and things like that, and just kind of going around. So, but obviously Israel is involved in a lot of this, and I'll get into this thing about, as a good example is Syria, of course. And of course, Israel loves to bring chaos and instability and poverty to all of their neighbors. They keep them down. They don't want anybody that can challenge their hegemony in the region. You know, wow, Israel is that's a real study. You know, and it's like you start talking about Israel, everybody says, come on now, come on, that can't be so. But it is so, it really is so. You think people are getting ridiculous talking about Israel. It's not ridiculous. Wow. And you see like the influence that Israel has in the U.S. Everybody that watches this channel knows. You know, you can watch so many people, Candace Owens or George Galloway or Jackson Hinkle. I mean, how many people talk about this? Maybe even a lot of the people that are doing the exploiting in the United States even know about this, and they've even talked about it. So, to bring down a country's competitiveness, obviously, is a goal in and of itself. You know, it's anybody, oh, regime change doesn't work. Oh, it worked perfectly. That's exactly what they wanted to do. Wow. It's like, that's just something for us to think, oh, well, oh, you know, I mean, well, if it doesn't work, then why is the U.S. continuing to do it? And they're not going to do it in Colombia, and I'll get into that. They're not going to do it in Colombia, so don't even worry about that. I mean, it would be really stupid and make you go, what the heck? I'll tell you about that in a minute here. So, yeah, make money for the donors, political donors, and banks, of course. Look at Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs is a big example. They were really heavily involved in Syria. But you know, the strange thing is, they themselves did not necessarily make very much at all in the entirety of Syria. So now when they were stealing, well, I don't know, when they were stealing the oil, when the United States, well, their proxy, the proxy of the United States, this group called ISIS, which is a proxy of the US and of Israel. There is no doubt about that. Everybody knows that. I mean, anybody that knows anything knows that that's the truth. Donald Trump, I don't even know why he talks the way he does. Oh, we kicked the crap out of ISIS. There was no goal to kick. As a matter of fact, they wanted to prop up ISIS. ISIS, that was also the British. The British were involved in ISIS as well. A lot of the members of the so-called ISIS were British. And there's a lot of them, they didn't even speak any Arabic. They spoke British. And that's a known fact. There's a lot of reports coming in when so-called ISIS came into some of these villages in Syria. No, none of them spoke any Arabic. They spoke English, British English mostly, and a lot of terrible things. What was this Baghdad Bob, or I don't know, some of these guys that they've had on the internet. I don't even know what. I didn't follow any of that stuff. Supposedly killing people or something, speaking English and British accents. So Goldman Sachs, they were involved in that, but Goldman Sachs was also very much involved in Libya. They made money. They made good money in the overthrow of Libya. So they were part of that. And of course, it doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or if it is Obama, even though, let's see, I think it's, whenever a new one comes in, of course, they get rid of some of their old people from the other party, and it was one thing that when I lived in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and very few white people, and I was one of them, and they said that when you give money for political donations, they said you give it to both sides, but just give more to the one that is sitting in power, because if you don't, you might suffer something when the next party comes into power and you didn't donate to them. So you have to donate to them. That was the word about it. And yeah, I knew people that had banks, and they had investment banks, offshore banks, and a lot of other business people. And, I met a lot of people that had, hundreds of acres of land and some things. I mean, you get a good insight when you see people coming into a developing country and they seek to invest, and you sit at the table with them, or you sit there with some investors, and you're sitting with people from the government, and then of course eventually the person from the government gets around, well, what's in it for our country? That was one of the things, because a lot of the investors will go in, as I've sat with some, and they were saying, well, we're going to do this and we're going to do that and all that, and then the person who got a much higher position later on, she said, well, what's in it for our country? And anyway, some of these things, I'm sitting there thinking, wow, this is incredible. I was that much involved with a lot of this stuff back in the old days, but it doesn't matter. I mean, you out there, I can go with that information to a coffee shop, put down 3 rubles and get a coffee if I tell them that. So anyway, Goldman Sachs, they were involved in that. Other banks, probably. Goldman Sachs is normally wrapped up in about everything. I guess they sit in on a lot of government meetings in the White House. There's always a representative, I've heard, from Goldman Sachs. I'm not there, but I've heard that from a lot of people. So, and Goldman Sachs is a multinational investment bank, and they're primarily is, and they're a major part of the Federal Reserve, of course. They're involved in all wars lately. Yeah, wait a minute, I think, did I say they made money in, no, they didn't make money in Libya. I got that wrong. They didn't make money in Libya. They actually lost, they themselves. Now, they work with other people that probably did make money, but they didn't make money in Libya. So, because I was now looking at my notes here, and I had researched all this, but they made decent money in Syria, and probably still do. The United States owns, what is it, like, they own, and they say that is in the language. It's very strange. Now they're saying that they own Venezuela, but the United States back then even saying that they owned a portion of Syria, and they said they bombed the rest of it into rubble and they want to keep it in rubble. So, but the part that they were having is going to be very good. It's where all the resources are. That's where the oil is. That's where agriculture is. That's the fertile soil. That's everything. And that's the part that the United States took over in Syria. And they're still there to this very day. They have their terrorist camps at Al Tanf and all of that sort of a thing. So, But anyways, Goldman Sachs made money there. And as you guys know, that was a lot of this was sucking the oil out of that area. And big convoys going into Turkey, and Erdogan's son was heavily involved in that, and it was laundered. The money was laundered through Goldman Sachs Bank, and so a lot of people were making a lot of money. And at that time, it was Turkey was very, they were supposed to be friends with Russia, but Erdogan, his his interests lie whichever direction the wind is blowing. They say a loose cannon on deck, and you never know what and for what reason. And he changes alliances, or he does this, and it completely shocks you. Somebody who is his friend, he'll shaft him over here. Remember, they shot down, and he was going around and celebrate. They shot down a Su-34, I believe. Maybe it was a little bit over into the border, and he was going around celebrating, and then he found out that how much tourism relied on Russia, depended on Russia going into Turkey, and the resorts were empty. Almost all of them were Russian. It's huge. It's very huge. And so the tourism industry, which was very big in Turkey, it virtually collapsed. So then he went on his knees to Putin. So anyway, they kind of made some understanding and all that. And it's strange, because I saw that in Russian class here. There's Syrians, very few Syrians actually in our were in the Russian classes, but there are a lot of Turks. There are lots of Chinese. Quite strange. Most of the Africans, they had their own class, like big groups of Africans. And I think there might be Pakistanis now. This isn't Belarus specifically, but quite a bit of Turks. And it's odd, it was odd to me, was not putting two and two together, that a lot of these Turks, they already know Russian. So, and there are towns in Turkey that have dual language. They have Russian and Turkish. So a lot of them grew up speaking some Russian, even as small children. And I was amazed, like these people coming in and they could already speak some Russian and all that. And so that's how heavily Turkey relies on Russian tourism, to those resorts there. So that obviously would have hurt. I'm just saying that to emphasize to you guys how important it is. But Goldman Sachs, they did very well in Afghanistan for some reason. I guess maybe over a long period of time. So they made good money in those days in Syria. They probably are still making decent money, and made maybe more money in Afghanistan. How? I have not the faintest idea. They're not like pumping oil as far as I know from there. But they're involved maybe in the weapons trade, things like that. But the money that they were making in Syria, that's what I said, they were doing fine, but not really good. They stood to make vast sums in Syria. But it was on Russia entered the war there. The United States technically started in Syria in 2011, but they didn't really go in, I think, until 2013. Now, the United States, and it was put out by Sybil Edmonds and her site Boiling Frog. She was known as the most gagged person in U.S. history, and she's ordered to shut up about 9/11, the things that she knew. And she was a translator. She knew quite a few languages, and I think she's Armenian, but she spoke Turkish as well as Farsi, and of course, English and all that. But she put out on her site, about these military bases that the United States was running, some in Jordan, but bigger ones in Turkey. And then soon after that, wham, we all of a sudden have ISIS that just appears out of nowhere in Syria. Oh, that was surprising, wasn't it? So anyway, that was the United States training them, because she was asking about that, because it was coming out in Turkish newspapers about these jihadis being trained by the United States in bases in Turkey near the border of Syria. Oh, what a surprise. And then, where did they attack? Oh, Aleppo. Oh, right near the border of Turkey. To start off with. Oh, what a surprise, huh? So anyway, Russia came in the war. It was actually on September 30th in 2015. And they started bombing these convoys and the oil assets of ISIS, supposedly, stealing this oil, even though Syria doesn't have a vast amount. They started doing that on November 20th of 2015. And immediately, well, it's very strange that the United States was not bombing the place where ISIS was getting all their money to run their operations. Isn't that really, they just must have missed. They just didn't see it. They got satellites flying all over there, far more than even Russia or anything. But somehow the United States just didn't see it on all these trucks, hundreds and hundreds of trucks in convoys going from those areas that were under the control of ISIS and going into Turkey. Somehow we just didn't see them, I guess you could say. So, and I think within 1 week, Russia destroyed 525 oil trucks on their way to Syria. On their way to Turkey. And it was, of course, the United States and ISIS, making a lot of money, and it was supporting ISIS as well. Why do I say the United States? Because Israel is heavily involved in that. And I was telling you guys, I think it's a joke. I'll bet you Israel is joking about this. They're sitting back and laughing their heads off, as they do about probably lots of things. They've even shown them laughing about how they, when they get like one of a president like Bush or Obama to do something, they show them at dinners and things saying, I've made them do this, ha, 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 in front of a lot of people, and they're all laughing about how they control the United States. But ISIS, the original definition of ISIS is Israeli Secret Intelligence Services. So I'll bet they're the one that founded this ISIS, because if you go to these so-called terrorists, and you say ISIS, and they'll say, what is that? They wouldn't know. Like Al-Qaeda, I think they probably gave that name too. And I think in some Arabic dialects, I think Al-Qaeda means the toilet. So who would name their terrorist group the toilet? So we have to, we're the toilet. We're the toilet. Who would be doing that stuff? I think they say, well, I've got to go to the Al-Qaeda. That's what I've heard. I don't know. I don't speak Arabic. I should look that up. They have translators on telephones now. But I think they're just sitting around laughing their heads off. And yeah. But anyhow, ISIS was growing in leaps and bounds before Russia came in. And when Russia came in, that's when ISIS started to shrink and leave. Before that time, there was like interviews of people, and they would interview people in Syria. And after the U.S. supposedly bombed something from ISIS, and they would say, well, there were some terrorists, but they hadn't been there for weeks. And then the U.S. bombed those places. And it's strange that they bombed bridges and they bombed highways and they were bombing factories, when there was nobody there. There was no ISIS there. And they bombed industrial districts, huge districts of a lot of factories in Syria. And the U.S. bombed them all. Oh, yeah, ISIS was there. Oh, yeah. Well, nobody saw them. Sometimes they were never there in the first place. Strange that all these ISIS fighters, when they got gravely wounded, they went and got their medical care in Israel. They got across the border to Israel. I told you guys already a lot about this stuff. So Israel is, ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and of course Hillary Clinton admitted that Al-Qaeda is a proxy military of the United States government. And it's like a lot of this stuff, it is so shocking when you hear this stuff. It's like, oh, come on, you're a conspiracy theorist, shut off the television or whatever you're watching me on or something. It's good. But there's just overwhelming evidence. And like I just said, it's very easy for people to disappear evidence and things from the internet, but a lot of time they don't get rid of it, so you can find a lot of these things. Absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yes, and I guess what the West and ISIS and their partners ISIS, they were getting per day 1.5 million US dollars every single day from the stealing of all that oil. They were pumping it out as fast as they can and as much as they could from Syria in those days, before Russia, of course, stepped in. Wow. And yeah, the US started that so-called civil war. They're the ones that started, like I just said about these bases and things like that. I guess that was in 2011. Let's see. So yeah, I mentioned the base. What is it? Israel, 2013. U.S. Special Forces went in 2014 to conduct operations against not only Assad's forces, the Syrian army, but also rival groups to the ones that Israel and the United States and Great Britain mainly were supporting. And of course, the whole objective then was to get rid of Assad. Strange, it didn't work then, but it worked afterwards. Till they got this Jolani involved. I don't know. But anyway, that war was more for Israel than anything else. More for Israel than, I guess, the United States. And it's like Syria. When has Syria ever attacked Israel? I don't know. Maybe what was it? Maybe 50 years ago or something. But I don't know. Israel just has to attack. I don't know if they're still doing it every week. I don't know if that worked out yet. Donald Trump is not liking that. I don't know. And I don't even know why he doesn't like it. He's got some kind of a design. Donald Trump doesn't give a crap about people killing each other. He just says that he does, because it looks good, but he's probably got some other designs. Maybe it's the stability of pumping this oil. And of course, the company it was an American company. And the whole reason for this Syrian war, the main reason for this war in Syria is, of course, Israel is one of them. And another one is a company called Genie Petroleum. Genie Petroleum, at that time, it was on the board of directors was Dick Cheney, the former vice president of the United States. A great guy. Well, he died recently. And also on that board were a lot of rich people like Rupert Murdoch and all of that, and they got the mineral rights for the Golan Heights from Israel. So they got it signed over to them, and Israel was in possession of, a portion of the Golan Heights, but I think where most of the minerals and things were, it was in another part of the Golan Heights that was still controlled by Syria. And well, of course, now it's controlled by Israel since Jolani went through. And then that was a big objective, was to get that land and all that. And I've already told you, and you can find online, of course, there's probably YouTube videos with Benjamin Netanyahu talking about all the billions that they're going to be making from oil and gas. And of course, a lot of it is going to be coming from those areas. That is very rich. They say that it might have the wealth, or at least it's very close to having the wealth of Saudi Arabia, mineral wealth, so gas and oil. And Benjamin Netanyahu was talking billions and billions, that they're going to get billions from all of this, as well as what's offshore from Gaza. They're going to be taking a lot of that as well. So it's a huge rape going on right now from a lot of people that have no power. And they're stealing primarily oil and gas. Dmitry Medvedev, he even said something else yesterday about that. I told you already about that one tweet that he made about, but he said yesterday that you have to be very strong militarily if you want to, keep your country from getting invaded. A lot of people are saying, I think it was even Alexander Dugin, the philosopher from Russia, he is saying that we have now entered into the phase of World War III. And I think what he is getting at is this rule of the jungle. So World War III, I guess, maybe you can characterize it as the rule of the jungle, the law of the jungle. And Dmitry Medvedev, he used a Latin phrase. I don't remember what it was, to be honest with you. I thought it was like lex. There's two phrases of it, and it somehow means like law of the jungle or something like that. Is what's going on, because there's I mean, it's been like that anyway. You guys know for quite some time. The United States does the rules-based order, you know. It means that other people, that U.S. and Israel, probably, they make some rules. Everybody else has to follow them, but those two definitely don't. And the other ones can get a get-out-of-jail-free card. You know, some of these places, like, I don't know if Germany's ever used it, but Great Britain, you know, says, well, am I allowed to go in there and can I decapitate the leader from that country and take over that country? And then you get a yes or a no. And I guess France and the UK, it was just yesterday, I guess. And yesterday, maybe the night of the day before. So anyway, within the last 48 hours, the UK and France had a joint operation. They bombed somewhere in Syria. So I guess maybe that takes a little heat off of Israel. So Israel didn't have to bomb Syria this week. It was France and the UK that helped them out in this time. So everybody got to switch off, you know. Okay, whose turn is it to bomb Syria this time, or whoever bomb whatever? Yeah. Oh, and I was also wondering, yesterday I was talking about these Somali daycares and things like that, with Israel being involved in that. And it has a lot to do with the country Somali, and then there's Somaliland, and Israel recognized Somaliland, and they're going to use, they have great hopes, or great, what's the word? Great plans for Somaliland. Israel's the only country in the world that recognizes it. And I think I think it looks to me like it's approximately one half of Somalia. So they took over that, declared their own little country there. And I think they even wished a Happy New Year to Donald Trump, sent some letter. You know, they're trying to get recognition, obviously. And but anyway, Israel's going to put their forces there on the coast of Somaliland, because right across the water, you might even be able to see it on a clear day. So you can see Yemen. So obviously they want to go after Yemen because Yemen cares about the people from Palestine. They're brothers, I guess. And also, what else is that? So the United States, obviously, it's kind of strange. You have Donald Trump. There was a guy named Adolf. I mentioned this stuff yesterday. He went to Norway, you know, at the very beginning, before World War II. He attacked Norway, used airborne troops, the first use of airborne troops. And that was to get, I guess, to secure an oil, energy supply. So that's why he went into Norway. And we have another guy today. He went into Venezuela, I guess. It's to secure an oil supply. And even though they already have a lot of oil, it's actually probably for different purposes. I don't think that old Don is going to be following in the footsteps of Adolf. You know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not saying that. It's just ironic that that's kind of, you know, how World War II is at the beginning, and Alexander Dugin talked about the beginning of World War III. I don't know. I don't know. You guys, maybe you have some other leads that can kind of put some dots together, and we can all wait and see if something like this is going to have, if history is going to repeat itself or whatever. So, yeah, U.S. Special Forces. And I guess I remember back in Libya, the Special Forces that actually began in taking over Libya was British Special Forces. They landed on the beach. So, but I guess the first Special Forces that went into Syria was American Special Forces. 2014, that was also the same time what was going on in Ukraine. That's the beginning of that time. So anyway, that Special Forces were supposed to go after, you know, some of Assad's people, probably, you know, in the small groups. You know, normally you got to train like Delta Force. It's like you get locked up for a while, and you get told of these missions. You're not even allowed to talk if you're married with your wife or anything. And I guess, you know, somehow a message gets to your wife, and you don't see your wife for some months because you're training for these special missions and things. And you sleep there and all that sort of stuff. The training is really a lot of training, and you know that they went through that because Delta Force is what was used against Chavez. And, you know, there's like specialties. A lot of people, you know, there's always at least one that learns a language. There has to be somebody that speaks the language of whatever country you're performing an operation on. There's a demolition specialist, and there's actually a person for government too. So you get trained in political science on how to run a country. Believe it or not, that's the absolute truth. They didn't need it apparently in Venezuela, or they weren't planning on doing it, or maybe it's too difficult of a mission. It's probably just geared towards small countries and things. But it's, you have to know what to set up, what to look for, and all kinds of different things. So maybe they did use that in Syria. Like I said, it's everything's in speculation right now, and not even the people that know a lot know very much. So they don't know a lot, in other words. So I don't know. More is going to be coming out as time goes by. There's other stories. I could have been talking about a lot of other things, but I had some of these interesting things I wanted to talk with you guys about. And, the wealth, and that was just mostly an example, what I was going at. Telling you about Syria, but I'm going to be talking about now how this actually kind of relates to Venezuela. So somebody wrote I think it was on a different site, that the main reasons for U.S. wars are routes and resources. And that's a lot of truth to that. If you call routes are sometimes for strategic reasons, like they wanted to take Belarus for a strategic reason, as a route to get into Russia. And Belarus was supposed to fall before Ukraine, but they had to go on the U.S. government and go after Ukraine because Lukashenko stood in their way here a few times, I guess. Wow. That's incredible. It's weird that they even put this stuff out. You find out this stuff afterwards. A lot of these missions and things they've put out, and it's true. It's all true. It's not like fake stuff, So, Genie Petroleum, I could mention that. Let's see if I went through all that stuff right. So let's see. I'll just add a little bit to that. Anyway, it was supposed to be for a transit route from the Golan, and it was supposed to go through Syria. And the oil and gas, whatever they were going to plan on pumping through there. And Assad said, no, first you steal our, Syria's land, and then you want to steal the mineral resources of Syria, and then pump it through our country, and I'm supposed to give permission to that. And Bashar Assad said no. And so that was the reason for the war, because the West said, well, we're going to do it anyway. So that's when they went to war against Syria at that time. And Russia entered the war because the whole purpose of that, sending all those mineral, energy resources and stuff into Europe, was going to sidetrack Russia's, like Nord Stream and Druzhba pipelines that sent energy resources into Europe. So it would have diminished at least the value, and maybe they would have cut it off then and there. At that time, any kind of Russian gas or oil coming through. But it looks like, even still, so if and when they build this pipeline now that Israel, the United States, and all that, they've gotten control of Syria, and of course they can force the government there to do anything that they want to do it. I don't know if they're going to be putting that pipeline through there. Like I said, Benjamin Netanyahu has been talking about all these resources and how many billions and billions Israel is going to be making from that. Like he just said that a week or so ago. So, strange it's not being broadcast very loudly on the Western media or even over here. Like people are not really seeing the significance of this. I see it, and that's why I'm telling you guys. And it kind of lets you know what this is all about. It's the same thing as what's going on in Venezuela. That's why I'm telling you this stuff. And so now Europe, they might be getting, so now that they blew up the pipelines in Russia and are cutting off this gas and oil and all that, so maybe then the United States is going to be, because that's Genie Petroleum, if it's still Genie Petroleum, or who knows, well, I think it's Chevron. They're probably hooked with Chevron. And so the United States is going to be making a lot of money there, a lot of money in oil and gas from the Golan Heights area. So that is something. And remember that when I'm getting into this other stuff about Venezuela. This is all shocking information. It tells you guys about this. So So it'll be going through Turkey, obviously. And Turkey is going to be a big transit place anyway, because that's where the Turk Stream, Russia is sending the gas into Turkey because it's all blocked up in northern Europe. So they got to send it all the way down. It's got to go into Turkey. And then from there, I don't know, probably through Bulgaria. But Turkey has a better relationship with these other countries than Russia does, of course, just because of the fact that it's Russian. Nobody's going to let it go through. So now then it's going to be Turkish gas when it gets to Turkey. So, and Ukraine's been trying to bomb that pipeline repeatedly. Maybe who knows if that's going to happen. So it's not as big as the Nord Streams, but anyway, it's significant enough. But anyway, that stuff, it explains a lot to you guys. It should. So now Venezuela. And there's a lot to talk about that. The other wealth of, mineral wealth and other wealth in Venezuela is far greater than most anywhere in the world. If I were Trump, I'd actually be trying to make friends with those. I'd try to win the hearts and minds of the people, which instead of going around bragging how he controls them and how he owns the country and how he's going to exploit them, he gets out and makes some little things, and for the Venezuelan people. I would be expressing and emphasizing it's for Venezuelan people more than anything, even if it's not. He should be doing that. I mean, it's very, humiliating for those people to be listening to this guy, telling how he's going to rape their country. I'm going to get your daughter, whatever. He should go out of his way to make nice. That's what I would be doing. And let's not forget Gran Colombia. Remember, just weeks ago, you hear Maduro was talking about Gran Colombia. Not only that, Gustavo Petro, the leader of Colombia, was talking about Gran Colombia. And these people, both of those leaders, well, it doesn't matter so much with Maduro anymore, not even Petro, but they believed, those two, that they need to form an alliance. Otherwise, they're going to go down. They can't match the strength of the United States. Not even together they can't. But at least they can resist a lot better. And when all the people are behind them, it's they have a stronger ability to resist, and maybe they can even bring China and Russia more onto their side to help them out even more. Instead of just man-pads that were sent from Russia, they can get better help. Maybe their air forces combined, they can maybe work something out. And at least maybe then the United States will say, well, we'll lose too many people, so let's not do this. But obviously that wouldn't have happened anyway. The United States, even if they're going to lose a lot of people, it doesn't look good for voters. And I guess if there's always an election coming up, it's always a general election or a midterm election. But if right after midterms, that's going to be a dangerous time. But it also partly depends on how the midterms go. So it's probably not going to go good for the Republicans. Okay. So Gran Colombia. So I was thinking to myself when I heard them both talking about that, I was saying, well, who would lead it? Would it be Maduro or would it be Petro? But I guess that question has been answered by the United States. I guess it would have to be Petro, right? But not just yet, because that can't happen either. Well, it could happen. But somebody would have to move fast, or it'd have to be... Anyway, I'll get into that. So I don't think they're thinking outside the box. That's just a suggestion that I have. People aren't going to say, well, they're going to form Gran Colombia. I would say that it's a necessity. And it's kind of thinking outside the box. But that's how advancements are made, and that's how successful advancements are made, is thinking outside the box. I know that. Elon Musk knows that, and I'm not a great entrepreneur like that, but I have experience at least a little bit in that area. I'm sure a lot of you out there do too. So there's an elephant in the room. Another elephant in the room. It's not just if they would form a Gran Colombia, which they probably want. I think, what was Ecuador part of that? I don't know. The United States has some good friends for various reasons down there. But before 2022, Venezuela and Colombia did not get along together. It was only with the election of Petro, and he opened up conversation with Venezuela and friendship and all that. So, but it's a sad thing that they're limited to one term. That's the problem in Colombia. And President Petro's term is up in 4 months, so he's going to be gone very soon. I think I wrote the date somewhere. Did I write a date in here? Well, I'll get to that maybe. But anyways, Colombia also has some oil, and they have a lot of coal, and they have emeralds. They have very famous emeralds. That's some of their natural resources. Obviously, they're the biggest deliverers of coffee, I should know that, to the United States, as well as Brazil, of course. And of course, Brazil coffee, and it's actually better than Colombian coffee. Colombian coffee, of course, the United States heavily invested in the coffee industry, much more so in Colombia than they are in Brazil. And I told you I met an American. I've talked a lot about that guy, and he owned resorts and things in the Caribbean, a lot of resorts, hotels and things like that. And he wanted to keep it a big secret that he had a coffee plantation in Panama. Panama, actually, there's some coffee there is far more expensive than any coffee in almost anywhere in the world. But you don't hear about Panama coffee. It's the Esmeralda, Hacienda La Esmeralda. And some of that is, it's sold by auction most of the time. And sometimes unroasted, it goes for like a pound, like $60 US. So I guess if you sell it for that, if you were going to have a cup, each cup would be $10 or more than $10 a cup. I think Starbucks has Esmeralda, I believe. We don't have Starbucks here, so I can't verify this, but I think it's $7 a cup or something. I've heard in the United States. I don't know. Well, you can look it up. Esmeralda, and that's from an area in Ethiopia that somebody brought the bean over there. And that's just the name of the place in. It's not that. That's not the variety. The variety is Gesha, not Geisha. Gesha. It comes from a Gesha region in Ethiopia, and somebody brought it over to Panama, and it doesn't produce a lot, and that's maybe one reason why the price is very high, because it's not as productive as a lot of other varieties. Like I was growing Typica, and that is a very high. That's a Kona coffee in Hawaii is Typica coffee, and otherwise a lot of places in South America you can't grow Typica, even though it is very good quality. But they have coffee bean borer. It's like a beetle, and it bores into the coffee beans, and they have coffee rust. I was growing it on St. Vincent and the Grenadines because they don't have those sicknesses. So that's why my coffee was expensive, and I could grow coffee, is because they didn't have those sicknesses on St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and I was growing it. I got mine from Kona, from a place called Lion's Gate, macadamia nut and coffee farm. You can look that up on the internet too. And they sold seeds, so I don't even remember how much. Susan, I guess, was a woman there that it's a family-oriented place in the Kona region in Hawaii. So if you want to verify what I'm telling you, you can look that up. Lion's Gate, I think that's like a company that makes movies in Hollywood or something. So it's easy to remember that. And anyway, if you contact them, tell Susan thanks, because it helped me quite a bit. And but anyway, I processed it in a very good way, so I made sure that I tried to go for the best quality possible. And like I said, a lot of people were drinking the coffee, like famous rock musicians and like designers with designer clothes and leaders of countries. Hugo Chavez and probably Maduro drank my coffee as well. And I would hear from people in the government that they said when they go traveling, and they see the leaders from other countries, that the leaders from other countries would always comment on the coffee from St. Vincent, which was me, of course, anyway. But anyway, let's keep going on this stuff. My bragging session is already done. So Venezuela, if we're looking at this at the northern border, and that would be part of Gran Canaria, and then there's a kind of a problem. You look at the south, and the south borders Guyana, and there is some enlightening information that a lot of you probably don't know. But so there's a disputed region, and it's not in Venezuela. It is part of Guyana, and I hope I wrote Essequibo region, and I think it's something like Guyana Essequibo is another name for that. And that's a river, the name of a river, and it's been in dispute since the late 1800s, like 1899 or something like that, between the two countries, and it's claimed by both Guyana, and it's a big mess up from colonial days. Somehow they didn't do things right, and it's claimed by Venezuela, and it turns out that this is a very rich area. It's got minerals and things there as well, and it makes up like 66% of the entire country of Guyana. So if that went over to Venezuela, most of the country of Guyana is gone then. And there's a lot of rainforest there. It's Purple Heart, valuable woods there. And like I said yesterday, I know not a lot, but I know quite a bit about woods. It really fascinates me. Wood fascinates me. The quality of woods, and there's tone woods. You can make things like pianos and guitars and flutes and things. We had one, I was growing some on mine called Blue Maho. Blue Maho is also a tone wood, and I think it's good for flutes and things, but it's not as good as I don't think Purple Heart is a tone wood, and teak is not a tone wood. It's too oily. You can't glue it. Teak is good for ships. The main reason why Great Britain had India as a colony is because of the huge teak forests, and they were in those days building their ships out of teak. Teak, very, very powerful wood. I have had a lot of teak trees on my land. I planted them all, of course, and got a lot of seeds. I was making a pitch for my land yesterday, and so I was trying to make it more valuable. I have cinnamon trees, teak trees, blue maho trees. I have pink ivory, a couple pink ivory, very, very valuable wood from South Africa. If you look up pink ivory, and I think there was what was it called? White cedar, white mahogany, or anyway, I like wood. I won't even get much into that so much. Anyway, it's not part of this thing, but so this disputed area, the biggest thing about this disputed area is off the coast. The offshore holdings of this has huge oil and gas reserves. And the United States is already there. ExxonMobil, this was discovered in 2015. Did I write it here? Yeah, just recently. And they're already there. It's sucking out that oil and the gas and all that. And let's see. So let's see. 2015 is when they discovered these huge reserves in this. I can't remember the name. Doesn't matter. The name of this big oil field, huge, right off the coast, and it's mostly in the territorial waters of this disputed place. And Venezuela really started going after this, and after this was discovered. And of course, very strange that it's what a coincidence, right? Then Guyana made really good friends with the United States. I guess a lot of the exploration was done by ExxonMobil. So, they get something for doing the exploration, I would say. But of course, it's a lot of exploitation. The majority of everything goes to ExxonMobil. And the land is very good, like I just said, the forests, and they got other minerals and things there. But just over a year ago, Venezuela moved to try to annex it. So they were granting free citizenship to the inhabitants, citizenship for Venezuela. And it's a lot like what was happening here in Belarus, where Poland wants a big portion of Belarus. And nobody talks about this. You can watch Scott Ritter or anybody, and nobody ever talks about this. They talk about, Lvov, Poland, they want Lvov, they want up to Lvov, they want this portion of Ukraine, this little portion over there. Well, they also want, and they want even more, and they're doing much more to try to get a portion of Belarus. At one time, for a short period of time, it did belong to Poland. But that's how that is, a lot of the countries. If some country owned or had possession of some part of another country, even for a short period of time, then they want it back. It doesn't matter if it's thousands of years belong to somebody else, and then afterwards again belong to the same people. No, no, no. If it was for a couple of years, we want it back, So, but they want, they offer free passports, Polish passports, to the whole regions over there, the western regions of Belarus. So to be Polish, all the people that are living over there, it's kind of like saying, well, they're all Polish citizens anyway, so that should be part of Poland. And that's a major reason, as you all can easily guess, why they're building up a huge military. They're the fastest growing military. They want to be the most powerful military in all of Europe. And then it's just a coincidence that they want part of Belarus. And that a lot of the military is right there on the border. That's just a coincidence though, right? So, I don't know. And I wonder why Lukashenko got some tactical nuclear weapons and now he's got also Oryshniks. And I wonder what direction they're pointed and at who. Yeah, so... Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Yeah, like I said, Guyana somehow became very good friends with the United States there, and the U.S. is helping them to extract the oil there. Yeah, and it's mostly just ExxonMobil, almost exclusively. I think there's other companies a little bit involved in it, but it's mostly just ExxonMobil. They also are offering them political security, and they do military drills. U.S. military does military drills with Guyana. Gee, they're nice to do that, in conjunction down there. But all of this, what's going on in Venezuela, and they've already got that. It's the shocking thing is that the United States, it's got big repercussions, what's going on. Big repercussions for OPEC. The United States is going to be in control far more than OPEC of the world's oil and gas supplies very, very soon. And that is what Donald Trump is going for. It's pretty obvious, isn't it? And Saudi Arabia, are they part of BRICS now? Are they going into BRICS? The United States is going to be controlling the global price of oil. And when they can do that, they can harm a lot of countries. So they can, if they have the dollar is a means of financial control. And when they're going to be controlling the price of oil in the world, they already are the most powerful military, and they're trying to build up even more. But I think China's going to, it's also building up, and some things are going to be happening. The future is looking like it's going to be a very confrontative one. But like I was saying, as far as the leader of Colombia, his term ends in 4 months. And so he can talk, tough if he wants and all that. I don't think Trump is going to do anything because it's kind of a waste of time. They have an election anyway. Trump is just going to swing the election. And this guy can't run again. They only have one term limit in Colombia. And they elected the wrong president. Trump will make sure that they get it right the next time. Wow. Yeah, May 31st. So May 31st, so end of May, is when his term expires. I wonder if he can run for president of Gran Colombia if they reconstitute a Gran Colombia, or at least in part, maybe just with Venezuela and Colombia itself. They would be very wise to do so. I would be doing that. I definitely would be doing that. If you have a president, maybe depending on, doesn't matter which country, and if you care about your country, you care about your people and the well-being of them, why would you care to be, unless you're Donald Trump, to be the leader of that country? And you should be caring more about the people and the long-term sustainability of the country, and not it being a colonial country, a colony of some other place that can exploit you at will, do whatever they want. So, yeah, it's not going to happen, a regime change, I don't think. Why would Trump do that? It's going to be, he can do that in elections. They're going to be calling elections probably very soon here. But OPEC, they're going to lose a lot of power, as I just said. Price of oil is going to be determined by the United States. They're going to be in control of like around 60%, or they're going to be in control of the countries that have the oil, even if they're not in direct control. Donald Trump, he's pretty good at bullying people, so he can pretty much do a lot. Wow. So oil price is going to be a weapon just like the dollar. Social media through Israel, with Israel, that is going to be a weapon. That is going to be the near weapon. It's already becoming a weapon. As you see, TikTok, wow, this is going to be a real tough time. And is this all going to happen in 2026 or what? I mean, 2026, 2027, the world is going to be looking much different than it was in 2025. Maybe 2025 is going to be, I don't know, looking back, we think it was not a great year, but it's going to look like a picnic compared to some of the future that's coming up. Wow. So Donald Trump, he's probably going to get most all of the leaders of the world to stand in line to kiss his assets. I guess when he gets all these assets. Wow. Can you remember? Well, I'm sure you don't remember because it was before everybody's time that's out here listening. I don't remember either. I'm not that old. But remember no, I shouldn't say that. Well, if you remember hearing news about General Smedley Butler, and it was a speech, and I think they put it into a written form, and you can buy this, I think, on Amazon, and it's called War is a Racket. It's very short. I can't read it in one evening, but most of you probably can. I'm not that fast of a reader, but it talks about how everything, it describes for a large extent, the military-industrial complex, something that everybody thinks that Eisenhower is the one that broke that in his farewell address when he was leaving the presidency, and he didn't dare to say it while he was president because they would do a Kennedy or something, or a McKinley or a James A. Garfield or a Lincoln on him, So he didn't talk about that, of how these companies and things, it's not just the ones that make the weapons. There's a lot more to it than that. It's the ones that make leather boots for soldiers. It's everything that is combined with all of the industry that is, the banks, everything that is part of making war. So anyway, war is a racket, and it's not necessarily that it has to always just be war, but it's just all these corporations. There's a lot of these corporations, and it's terrible what's going on. And I wonder if Donald Trump had a lot of petroleum companies that gave him a lot of help in his re-election. I mean, we all know that Israel helped him vastly. Israel's getting paid back, multiple for what Israel did for Donald Trump, because there's nobody that could have beat the deep state so easily, except for Israel. They have that power, and maybe some of these other lobbies. I don't know. You can look at the medical industrial complex, the pharmaceutical companies and things. Oil, big oil. Those have more money even, I think, than even Israel. But Israel has a lot of influence, as I said. It's like they're the superpower of influence, and they have got the levers. They got the people in all of the places, and they know exactly where to put the money and who to buy and who not to buy. So it's terrible. And Lindsey Graham, I guess I could have looked up Lindsey Graham a little bit more. He's really out there blabbing his mouth right now. Lindsey Graham is threatening everybody, threats, and he's like a big shot now. Even though he's a little guy, he's out there maybe with his boyfriend, and he's really the man now. I wonder if he makes his boyfriend bend over now. I wonder who does the bending over. But anyway, that doesn't matter, because I shouldn't be making fun of those type people like that. But anyhow, Lindsey Graham is very happy right now, I guess, because he can be a real big shot and he loves to threaten people, apparently, and he's getting a lot of money because a lot of those people are his backers. So it's really going on, a terrible world right now, everybody. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking out a lot about, and she was even mentioning about crypto things, and then you find out that Donald Trump made a lot with crypto, and there's a lot of this stuff going on, a lot of corruption behind the scenes. in many different ways that we don't even know about. It's not just big oil and Israel. There's a lot more. So, like she was saying, they pay people off now in crypto, and it's like not traceable. So that's how a lot of the things are getting done. Anyway, and I was going to mention something else. There's what is that called? But apparently Hegseth and Marco Rubio, they bet very heavily. I guess they made a lot of money. They made nearly $1 million, nearly $1 million, which is good for just one person, and they're, making bets and things like that. I guess they bet on a new leader, or the leader of Venezuela being removed. And gosh, it's weird. They're really good investors, because somehow that turned out right. I don't even know how they could possibly know that, but they made a lot of money. I think it was like near $700,000, both of them combined. I can't remember, but a lot of people are betting on this thing. I guess you can go online and you bet. They have all these things, and you bet, and you send some money in or something, but you can earn a lot of money. But they made a lot of money. So they should have bet even more. I don't know. I wonder if Trump made a lot of money. Anyway, it's terrible. Terrible stuff, people. So that's all I have today, and I hope it was helpful. A lot of revealing stuff today. And send that video to other people. Push the like button for sure, but send it and help me out. Maybe get some, maybe it will help me in a little bit different way that you can't imagine. So by sending my video, if I can get a little bit more people to watch these videos, it would be a lot better. So thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.